Hello, hello. So I think we are live. This is my first pre-scheduled live on LinkedIn. So hopefully the tech is working. I think it's all working fine. So I am here to bring a voice to anxiety. We have, this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. Mental Health Foundation is in particular raising awareness of anxiety as a mental health problem. And I wanted to, from having a slightly different perspective from the nervous system. So having studied, researched, and having gone through this this work and process myself of working with the nervous system and the body, which is really the root level of all our mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health problems. So having this perspective, I wanted to shed light on anxiety as not being a mental health problem. So I want to really talk about why that is, what anxiety really is, because when we begin to understand the root causes of chronic anxious states, that's when we can really know what to do about resolving it for good, not just treating anxiety or the symptoms of anxiety, having to manage anxiety, for life, but we can actually resolve it. And I think this is something that a lot of you will want. So this is what I want to do today on this live. I'll be here for about half an hour, so I'll try and keep it relatively short. I don't have a presentation. I'm just going to talk to you. I've got some notes that I want to refer to. So I'm just going to talk to you, and I will specifically talk about three things that I've mentioned when I was promoting this live. So really what anxiety is, why it's not a mental health problem, and how it is a problem of nervous system dysregulation. And I will also talk about the link between intelligence and anxiety. Because so many of you are highly intelligent, really smart women, this applies to men too, who are just experiencing that sense of unease and that sense of being unsettled, the anxious states, which are very much linked to high intelligence. And I want to explain this to you from this nervous system perspective. And then I want to talk about, we'll get to, how do we resolve anxiety if we can't resolve it through cognitive approaches, which is really what our conventional approach is, because anxiety, when anxiety is considered to be a mental health problem, and we are looking at it as something that is in the mind, or it's the quality of the thoughts that we are thinking, then the conventional approach is to work on the thinking. So cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, mindset coaching work is very much geared towards that. And there are problems with that, because people can't really overcome anxiety just by thinking differently. Because the anxiety is not in the mind, or rather it's not in our thinking mind. So if you are watching live, or if you're watching it on replay, you can let me know if you want to type into the chat, into the comments, hashtag replay, and I'll know that you're watching it after the live. So from the nervous system perspective lens, actually, before I go into that, I just wanted to say that, places like mind.org and NHS do have some recognition that anxiety also manifests itself through physical symptoms. So, which is a step forward. It is good that we recognize there is that they reckon the conventional approach recognizes their anxiety shows up in our physical symptoms. But unfortunately, that's where it ends with a conventional approach. It doesn't really explore or help people explore how their physical state actually feeds into the anxiety. So let me explain how anxiety from the nervous system perspective is in fact is not a problem. Anxiety is a function of our nervous system. It is a survival mechanism. So we have three neural states or nervous system states, and the one that triggers anxiety in us is the sympathetic activation. It's the fight or flight that we've all heard about, and that sympathetic activation, that anxiety is there for a reason, there for a purpose. It's there to alert us that there is some kind of threat and danger that we may be under, and that anxiety serves a purpose. The thing is that is really meant to be short-lived. So that stress response, that alert is meant to function and work when we are really under a threat and in danger, to help us save ourselves, to mobilize us. And then our nervous system downregulates as soon as we are back to safety. The problem is that, so it enables us, of course, that anxiety is an enabler. It helps us stay safe. It also is a motivator, so it helps us reach for, get up and go to work towards our short-term goals, our long-term goals. It helps us cope with stressful situations. So it's a very it's part of our stress response, a healthy stress response. It really becomes a problem when it turns into not just a short-term stress response, but when it is when our nervous system becomes functioning in that way, when the nervous system is stuck in that high activation. And that's due to dysregulation, and we can have a dysregulated nervous system for a variety of different reasons. On some level, if you are a high achiever, on some level your nervous system may have been stuck in that high activation your entire life, because our nervous system really begins to shape itself from conception. So when we are in our mother's womb, and then in infancy and our childhood, and then those patterns come with us into adulthood, which is why we can, be highly capable and yet have that sense that sense of unease, that sense of stuckness, that sense of something isn't quite right. And that's the state of our nervous system. It's just that we don't have enough understanding of this. So we think that there is something wrong with us, that we need to fix something, and that couldn't be further from the truth. And what's happening in that high activation state is that you, through that dysregulation, is that you are overcoping. You are hypervigilant, and that naturally, of course, leads to overwhelm oftentimes, which is when our nervous system throws us into that shutdown, into dorsal vagus, which is what we call dorsal vagal state of shutdown and collapse. That doesn't mean that we are collapsed and unable to function. Oftentimes, a lot of us, in fact, in our culture, are functioning through that state of freeze. It just feels like life is just passing us by. We're in a haze. We can't quite affect our circumstances. And that is what we call a functional freeze. And we can also experience states of depression in that state. So anxiety and depression are often kind of two sides of the same coin. And I've written a post about how that is the case. So if you want to just read a little bit more about that, then it's on my LinkedIn feed. If you go to my profile, you'll be able to get there. So what is the link between intelligence and anxiety? So there are lots of there's a lot of trauma-informed research these days. We're very lucky to have that. I have access to that information on neuroplasticity, how our nervous system is shaped and formed, and how we can rewire it and how we can repattern it to heal those patterns and to connect and to really function as and live as who we are from our authentic experience, rather than just the patterns that we, not just, but the patterns that we bring into our adulthood from childhood. So what is high intelligence? I mean, we measure intelligence through IQs. I'm going to put that on the side. This is not the best way to measure intelligence, even though I know that belief is very pervasive, that is what it is. But high intelligence from the nervous system perspective and from the trauma-informed perspective is actually hypersensitivity and hyperarousal or stuck in hyperarousal in your nervous system. So there was one study that showed that highly intelligent people have the double the likelihood of experiencing anxiety, and at the same time are 3 times more likely to experience allergies, for example, which is a body response to reactivity and to overstimulation. And from having this understanding, I also believe that it's not just that I believe, but that is the case, that autoimmunity, which is on the rise amongst women, is also a result of dysregulated nervous system. And in fact, it stems from the same root cause, where your immune system is impacted because the nervous system is impacted, and the high levels of stress hormones eventually end up depleting that immune system. So it's also linked to emotional suppression. So that higher reactivity in the body, which is in fact that intelligence, that that you are highly perceptive. And it isn't just the mental perception, even though part of that it is. So for instance, you may be really detailed oriented, so you can't stop looking and going down, kind of wanting to understand more detail, needing information. That's one way. And over-analyzing things, for example, looking for those solutions relentlessly. And on another level, your nervous system is also reading, through neuroception, is reading the environment around you, and is able to pick up on every little thing as stimulation. And this is where our nervous systems become overstimulated. So you, as a highly intelligent person, your nervous system is stronger, and you are smart, which means that you're able to attend to a lot of data in different ways. So in some ways, highly sensitive people have and are more reactive bodies, essentially. So high intelligence is, in fact, a neurological diversity. And I know we don't consider this, and this is a new perspective, but it really is biological. And when we look at our biology, it makes perfect sense that this is what's happening. And when you have a highly sensitive nervous system, what is required is you need to have a toolkit to be able to regulate the nervous system, and that doesn't happen through the mind. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But what I also wanted to say is that that same anxiety is that driving force, is that motivator. It is what drives you to go from, to move towards the things that you want, but it is also the thing that drives you to not be able to feel fulfilled from your achievements, and having to go to the next thing. And, it's when I have the highest salary, it's when I go for the next job, it's when I buy a house, it's when I sort out, get into a relationship. We always feel that it's the next thing that's going to bring us that calm and that sense of peace and contentment, or that we have arrived, that we are here, that we are alive. And that is the anxiety literally in action driving you. There is no one that thing that is going to make you feel that way until the nervous system is regulated and is able to discharge that stored survival stress, which is what really leads to that high, being stuck in that high activation. And and another point of view on this aspect is that we are seeking those external solutions, and of course we should go for the things that we desire. We desire all those things that I mentioned, and so we should go for them. But we think that those are the solutions to our problem, whereas anxiety and the nervous system, sympathetic activation, is an internal problem. So we cannot really solve internal problems with external solutions. We need internal tools, and you need internal tools, and I'll talk about it in a moment what these are, but to help you self-regulate, and so that you're able to discharge that stored stress and tension from the body, and be able to balance your nervous system. So when you're highly sensitive, highly intelligent, it's almost like you require that nervous system hygiene, and the toolkit even more so, because when your nervous system is pulling a lot of data and information at the neuroception level, remember this is all subconscious, this isn't something that you're necessarily aware of at the conscious level. But when your nervous system is picking up on all the stimulation, it can really bump up your sympathetic activation, bump you up to stress, to that hyper arousal, which then leads to anxiety. So having that skillful self-regulation, the skills and the tools for self-regulation, is something that is really fundamental, and it's what enables you to discharge the root cause, or the patterns that cause that stress and that anxiety from the body, and then be able to regulate yourself as you go through life, through stressful and challenging situations, and to put yourself out there, take risks in life, and be able to see opportunities rather than threats, which is what's really required for us to really go for what we want and to feel alive, and do it in such a way where our health isn't taxed, or where our health isn't suffering from just being on the go constantly. And also those stress hormones, which really cause so much havoc in the body, the cortisol and adrenaline being spiked a lot, is what really leads to so many imbalances in our hormonal system, in our immune system, in our metabolism, and the endocrine and hormonal systems is it, and the digestive system. So it's very, very common for high achievers to have, to suffer with these mental experiences of mental health, like anxiety and states of depression, and accompanied by digestive problems, for example, and hormonal problems. Autoimmunity is also, I think, pretty much most of the clients that I work with, the women have been diagnosed or suspect that they have an autoimmune condition. So I think it is more on the rise than we think it is. So we've got to really understand that nervous system and that physiology isn't just, our body isn't separate from our mind. What is happening in our body affects your thinking much more than the other way around. And your physical self is absolutely integral to who you are. We live in a culture which is really disembodied, and it is very pervasive in that disconnection from ourselves, which is why, in large part, why we have so much mental health problems and so much of chronic health issues, even though we have everything else that we need. We have the education, we have the jobs, we have the finances, we have, we have what we need, but we are still unwell, and we are sick, and we are struggling. So that there is a reason, not there has to be a reason, there is a reason. And the reason is that we're disconnected from from what is literally happening in our bodies. And it's not our individual fault. This is cultural, but that doesn't mean that we cannot, and we can absolutely rewire and work with our nervous system more towards that connection and that regeneration, rather than just be in that state of survival and defensiveness and self-protection all the time, which is so damaging. So, but what we need to do is not look at the solutions to anxiety as changing your thoughts, but to actually look at it as how we do it by shifting our somatic awareness and our sensory experience. So this is where the body becomes so significant. 80% of your neural signals go from the body to the brain, and only 20% go from the brain to the body. So your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions are deeply intertwined with your body states. And so what kind of, how do these body states really manifest themselves? Well, they manifest themselves through your posture, so how you're holding your body, and through tension patterns in your body. A lot of us have that's stored survival stress or trauma, whatever we want to call it. Trauma is quite loaded, so it's nice to use a different term because it sort of doesn't have that. It's not as triggering to us. I think when we talk about trauma, that can be quite triggering. So, so I think that stored survival stress, which is what trauma is oftentimes stored in parts of our body, such as our feet, our pelvis, our psoas muscle, which is what connects our hips through our digestive system, and our internal organs to the diaphragm and the middle back, which is where the back pain comes from. A lot of high achievers will be experiencing back pain, and we think it's just that we're sitting in chairs a lot. And yes, it's not that we're sitting in chairs a lot, it's that we are not sitting in chairs appropriately. And it's not about equipment, okay? It's not necessarily about the kind of chair you're sitting in, even though that also has an effect. But, we're so obsessed of getting kind of like the perfect thing to sit on, and we're unaware of what our body actually requires, how it needs to be sitting upright comfortably in order for it to be balanced. So that tension is often also in our diaphragm, because our breathing is one of the first things that gets affected by stress. When we're stressed, our breathing pattern changes. So a lot of us can have a very rigid diaphragm, which is where trauma or that survival stress can be stuck. And when we are not breathing properly, and we're using not our diaphragm, but we're using our auxiliary muscles, which are in our shoulders and our neck, to do the job of breathing on behalf of our diaphragm, that leads to a lot of dysregulation, and it leads to a kind of collapsed body posture, with sort of this. And then a lot of us just try and kind of straighten out by putting our shoulders back and tucking the chin down, which isn't quite what really, it's unsustainable. That's quite hard to sustain, because everything is connected. That posture, that sitting posture, has to really come from the feet and the pelvis, through the spine. I will do a workshop soon to show you how we can sit in chairs for a long period of time without having that feeling of slouchiness and that collapsed body posture. But what I'm really bringing here is that body posture is also going to affect your nervous system and is going to trigger anxiety. So it's not just about straightening up, because we first have to really discharge that stored stress in that body pattern, in that body tension, which is where chronic pain comes from, in order to release anxiety. So instead of going about releasing anxiety as a mental thing using cognitive tools, just by trying to think differently. And forgetting about the body, which is really the most important. It's not even the most important thing. Our body is who we are. We are embodied beings. Our emotions are embodied. Our thoughts are embodied. And those thoughts are really just the narration of our neural state. And I know that's quite challenging to really comprehend. But I will come on here and I'll talk much more about this. This is what I teach my clients. This is what I take my clients through, and they're having phenomenal results with this as well, because I have had phenomenal results with this. There is no mental work that you can do to help you in the same way that you can do embodiment work, and the type of shifts and releases that you can have. There is no way you can do this. It's just physiologically impossible to do that with just changing your thinking. So really the solutions are in releasing that stored survival stress from the body. We do embodiment type work with my clients, and we do it slowly. You have to approach nervous system very gently and very slowly. One of the biggest problems for high achievers is to be present in a moment, and we've got to, when it comes to the nervous system, because it's already overwhelmed, we've got to work with it in such a way that it doesn't overwhelm it even more. So it's slow and small, and with small steps. The slower you go, the faster you go, and the bigger results you have when it comes to nervous system healing work. So learning regulation as a skill set, including somatic awareness, so that you know where you are in any given moment and you know what your body needs. That is going to take you further than any kind of prescription, any kind of cathartic healing, any stress management technique that is very short term. Because when you are in those in your everyday life with those stressful situations, that's when you need yourself to be on board with where you're at. That's when your nervous system rewiring is going to benefit you, because those triggers that were once triggers, you're able to have that separation from them and have a choice. You're responding rather than reacting in situations. And this has just a host of health benefits, overall health benefits for you, where you're able to be more connected, be more present, have more energy, and go forward in life with just that much more aliveness. And so if this is resonating, I'm curious. I didn't see anyone coming on live, so this will be available for recording. If anyone has any questions, then do pop them into the chat. And I will also share a link. So if you want any more information, my LinkedIn feed is a really good place to start. And if you have been following me for a while and you have heard this before and it's really resonating with you, then you can book a free 60-minute consultation with me, where we can go over where you're at and how going to the root level of your nervous system can really enable you to finally move forward and progress in your healing journey, regaining your energy, healing the digestive system, balancing your hormonal system, feeling more alive, being more present, being able to deal with the circumstances that you're in, rather than keep avoiding them because it's too difficult to approach. So I will be sharing that link after we're done. So link to my calendar after this live, so that you can book your slot if you want to, if this is resonating. And if there is anyone on live and you want to say hi, you're very welcome to. And otherwise, I hope that this is helpful, and I look forward to doing more of these.